let's show we'll show the DC video while other people are joining us. So some people can take a look at that and see. It's real short, but it kind of shows the highlights of what we're doing.
I'm stoked and super excited to get to Washington, D.C. and see what's happening there now.
I would say meeting Edward Lee was probably one of the top highlights of my culinary career. I mean, everything that man touches is gold.
I really like hanging out and getting into debates about all things food and beverage with Simon.
So the thing about Joe Sasto is every time this guy makes pasta, he just makes it look so easy.
Awesome, thanks, Mike. So so let's get started here. Claire, just so everybody knows, Claire has been with us. We were talking this week. We were discussing this particular webinar. It's like, I think I did it about a year ago. And it's like, it was almost exactly a year to the date, which is really kind of amazing. Claire has been with Datassential for a decade now, right? And so she's in charge of some very significant areas of it, which I think it's better for you to talk about what you do there than for me to do that. And give us a little presentation. She's going to talk about fruit on the menu, which is so appropriate for today. Thanks.
All right. So we'll be going through one of Datassential's inspiration reports, which is pretty much what I do there. I'm in charge of the syndicated content for our Report Pro library, which is just kind of our reports hub. And so we'll be going through one of those inspiration reports. And the other thing that I do at Datassential is that I am one of the main folks in charge of our MAC. And I think most of us on the call have familiarity with this. This is the life cycle that Datassential has for food trends. The general concept being, and I think we all probably believe this to be true, is that things start at fine dining and your global dining independence. Some trends get to move on into adoption, and those are going to be, we always say, casual dining independence. So if it's anywhere that you might go out with friends or on a date night, that's kind of the general idea. And then they move to proliferation, which is going to be our casual dining chains and quick service chains. And then they move to ubiquity, some things do at least, where they're found just about everywhere. And we used to have to say, when I started doing this, like, it's not bad to be ubiquity. I don't think we have to say that anymore. I feel like we all know it's not bad to be ubiquity anymore. The idea being that excitement comes from inception and adoption level trends, and then volume, which is also very important, comes from proliferation and ubiquity trends. And as we know on this call, the way to do things is often to pick either a format that is ubiquitous or more proliferation stage, and then your flavors and other elements come from earlier in the MAC, or the other way around. If you're doing an innovative flavor, you need your format to be very simple. It's why almost everything ends up becoming like an aioli or a sauce in the end, because it's approachable that way. And then we'll look through our menu adoption cycle for fruits. What we have here is fruits are sort of an interesting category. Sometimes you'll see things where everything is sort of even between stages. Fruit doesn't do that in the same way. It's very heavy inception level and then kind of even thereafter because it makes sense. Fruit is hard to transport. And so not every fruit gets to make its way through the menu adoption cycle. That, it needs to have ability to be transported and to be adaptable to a wide variety of formats. So I would say for the most part, some of these things in inception may not move unless someone figures out how to kind of make them. Jam is kind of the classic way to do it because that's something that ends up being very versatile and easy to use. So that's often the first way something moves from inception to adoption for fruit. And then the other thing is you'll probably look at some of these and think, is that right, Claire? Did you really mean to put blackberries in proliferation? That it's a blackberry. And that's fair. And that's because it just doesn't have have the same kind of broad usage as something like and ubiquity. When you think of those flavors that are found across pretty much every type of format and always finding new applications, something like a blueberry or your classic kind of trio of flavors where you have like blueberry, berry, and to a lesser degree, like banana. You're just not going to find like blackberry bread in the same way you'll find banana bread English muffins. It just doesn't have that same broad usage. All of the inspiration reports follow. These are slides directly from the inspiration reports. I didn't dress them up to make them look fancy for this presentation. This is what they look like when you download them from our tool. And so they're a little data heavy for something like this, I'll admit, but they each have this where they have the hero ingredients. So these are the top items on menus. And it features our menu penetration. So that's % of restaurants offering. And then for this year, where we've been looking at 1 year and 4 year growth. Lots of times we only look at 4 year growth. We want to see if it's steady with how menus changed over the past year. This is 2021 data. So a lot of things are not featured after we had the COVID-19 menu shifts. So we wanted to see if something manages to grow in both the 1 year and 4 year, it's a really strong trend. And that's always true, and especially so with this particular data set. So the right-hand side, the far right-hand side, we have what's growing fastest on menus. And those are things that you'll notice as we go through the menu categories. The reason they're growing the fastest is because they work across a wide variety of applications. And then to the left-hand side, we have everything placed on our Mac for these mega trends. And then within these inspiration reports, we actually get into some real life examples for each of them with some relatively pretty pictures. I think I picked them out. I hope you think they're pretty. So the first one, this was something when Kevin and I were chatting, he was like, oh, we always cover US regional. But when it comes to something like fruit, it's a little bit earlier. I wouldn't say US regional as a concept is in general in inception, but when we look at fruits, it's a little bit earlier stage. And these are some of those examples of those fruits that you basically don't hear about unless you're from the region that they come from. So something like a salmonberry, which is relatively common in Alaska, is pretty much unheard of outside of there. So that's in those thumbprints in the picture. And then this example also has an example of a muscadine grape and then a Mayhaw tart, as well as a savory application from Australia with pawpaw. In the inspiration reports, we also look at some regional dynamics, which can reveal differences on menuing language throughout the country, as well as just usage differences. So when we look at it for fruit in particular, these look at the main census regions. So the index is telling you if it's more common in that particular region versus the rest of the US. You can see also some cuisine skews that we know are there. So in the West, we have kind of a broad variety of Asian cuisine menus, and that shows up with specifying things like green mango and green papaya, which is not common outside of those regions. And then in the Midwest, we have the regional call out to lingonberry. And then for the South, one that is sort of interesting to me is that in the Midwest, we tend to call them fruit trays. When we do catering, they're just fruit trays. In the South, they're fresh fruit trays. And then in the Northeast, they actually prefer to go with fresh fruit platter. And it's such like a weird thing to look at, but it's sort of funny once you start looking linguistically how things start to shift. And then that entire concept is no more or less common anywhere in the West. They are not the one who's going to bring like a fruit tray to some sort of catering event, which makes perfect sense when you think it through. And then another big mega trend that we had are all of those designer hybrids that are now starting to show up at especially sometimes on menus. So like this is the pink pineapple swordfish example in the lower left-hand corner there. But they're also being showing up in the produce aisle. So one of the examples in the long spiel is cotton candy grapes, which my daughter and I did a taste test where we got every type of grape from the store like a year ago. And those were her least favorite. She did not care for them. And now it's the only kind she will eat because they are called cotton candy. Just kind of representing even at age, 4 or 5, you have that marketing look and the importance of that visual appeal. So the pink pineapple looks really nice on the swordfish. If you did that same very expensive pink pineapple on salmon, it'd probably be completely wasted other than just sounding interesting because it wouldn't have that pretty garnish effect. And then throughout the report, we, if applicable, and in this case for fruit, it was, we looked at each menu area. So we have apps, entrees, and sides and what specifically is growing there. And since I put these together, you'll notice for your top growing that we go super teeny here. We're going well under 1% menu penetration, which most people are like, well, that's on less than 1% of menus. Do we really care? And you may care because you might, if you don't look there, you'll miss things that are already happening with home cooks and very specific cuisine types. We certainly wouldn't want to miss that jackfruit is growing on app, entree, and side menus. And we wouldn't want to miss all of these other little applications that are happening, or to notice the importance of things. All of your berry families are found, berry, dried cranberry, blueberry are all found on at least 10% of savory menus, which is sort of interesting. Some of them are, breakfast starch applications, but they're also, as we will see on the next slide, of course, a really core part of limited time offers for, in particular, your summer salads. It just isn't the same without them. So what we did here for these slides is we're looking at the top limited time offers and new items introduced from our top 250 major chains. In our scores database, we actually test them with consumers. So in that survey, what we do, for example, for this berry pecan salad, they get to see the name of the item, the picture, if available, and then the description. When we start asking them about it, they don't know the items from Corner Bakery, and they don't know that it's going to cost them $8.39. And so that really lets us sort of tease out specific things. And in this case, this particular item has a really high composite score. The scores are from 0 to 100. So to have a 92 puts it in a superstar status. And you can see if you look for all of the questions asked, so unbranded purchase intent, uniqueness, frequency, draw value, all of those together are 4 or 5 stars, all of which makes for a really strong seasonal item. It's the kind of item that them and various other sandwich chains, of course, introduce every summer. The highest unbranded purchase intent item featuring fruit was this fresh berry farmer's choice breakfast, which is, of course, just a regular breakfast, but with seasonal fruit, and certainly something you could do with any types of fruit. But that has very high purchase intent, with 65% of people probably or definitely likely to buy it. The uniqueness item is sort of interesting. I think there was one more that was like one slightly higher. Oh, it was the orange chicken bao. And I had to spend some time debating how much I wanted to do. I feel like everyone's talked about that orange chicken bao from Panda Express plenty. So I wanted to look at something that actually featured like the pieces of fruit themselves. So the charred lemon chicken pizza from Round Table has a uniqueness score of 63%, yet still manages a pretty high purchase intent. And it's like actual slices of whole charred lemon on a pizza. And yet 46% of people were probably or definitely likely to buy it. And 63% found it really unique, with a composite of 83, which was sort of interesting to me. I'm sure if you tried to do that, 10 years ago, people would have had some questions. And then the last one is this draw. And this one has an incredibly high draw number. It's a simple question before you even know that it's from Taco John's. It's, would you go somewhere just for this item? And 57% of people said, yes, I would. And that's for this mango shrimp street taco topped with a mango pico de gallo. Next, we have the non-alcoholic beverages, which is, of course, always an interesting place to look for fruit usage. And then you can see all of the different data here. Again, we see dragon fruit up at the top, lots of kind of unique citrus happening. And then the applications on the next page highlight a bunch of trends that we're seeing just generally across the beverage space. So the first one for composite score, I liked the real strawberry Sprite because you could use not Sprite and you could use not strawberries. It would really work with any sort of seasonal fruit. You could certainly see it made less sweet with something just like blueberry and club soda, and it becomes almost like a non-alcoholic cobbler type situation, another trending adult beverage format. And then when we look at the unbranded purchase intent item, again, it's that importance of being able to tell that it was actually made from fruit. It's not just, a strawberry syrup. You can see that texture from actual pieces of fruit, even in the picture. And then the purple pear popper Sprite, I actually broke my rules for pulling examples 2 times on this slide, just for you all. The first being that I kept 2 Del Taco examples. I try not to reuse a chain, but I felt like I had to for this one because the leaning towards that textural element in beverages is so important right now. Just even 3 or 4 years ago, people were like, I really think bubble tea is going to take off. And some people were like, I'm not sure about that. And the second you moved away from tapioca pearls, it absolutely did. Once we looked at something that wasn't chewy, but still had that fun texture element that, more quickly went away, it certainly has been taking off, and the entire concept is now in adoption. So this one has its bursts of kiwi fruit juice in the poppers, and then the flavor is a prickly pear. So it's got a lot of innovative parts going to it, which makes it unique, yet it still has pretty high purchase intent. And then the draw one, this one is breaking my rules because it doesn't have a picture, and we usually only use things with pretty pictures. But I think the important part with this one is when we talk about how we test these items, the consumer did not know that this was from Starbucks, first off. So all they saw when they were taking the survey is watermelon spritz, muddled watermelon, and simple syrup topped with sparkling water and ice. That's all they saw. And yet 55% of consumers said they'd go somewhere just for this item. It was not exactly what I would expect to find in the data. And then the more interesting part is usually, of course, when something is from Starbucks, when you look at branded purchase intent after they find out it's from that brand, it jumps 10 or so points. That's not what happened here. It barely jumped at all. So they really want to go somewhere specifically for this item, and that somewhere isn't necessarily Starbucks. So it really speaks to the importance of all of the work that everyone's doing to start to have those non-alcoholic, interesting beverages, and how you could kind of muddle any type of fruit and then top it with a less sugary option, and it would have probably high draw for a certain type of consumer. Same charts here for adult beverages. I did exclude wine for this slide because we don't want descriptors here. We're not looking for how people describe their wine flavors. We're looking for actual usage of flavors in a menu item. So these are the top growing there. The ume is particularly interesting that kind of the salty plum flavor is being used in margaritas at some more Asian cuisine type restaurants, kind of sticking with their flavor profile, but offering a beverage that's, of course, one of everyone's favorites that's associated with other cuisines. And then for desserts, desserts is a sort of funny one in that, of course, fruit is more established in dessert. That makes sense. And yet we think of it that way. But on menus, it's usually just 1 or 2 fruit gets to be the stars. So strawberry is still only found on less than a quarter of dessert menus. So while it's one of the first applications that comes to mind, it still has lower menuing, which means it has a much smaller amount of food items that are kind of growing on menus is another thing that's happening. And then lastly, each of the inspiration reports has some stuff from retail. In this case, it's my loved freeze-dried fruit example. This particular is the Rotten Fruit Box. I think that's still their name. It's a subscription-based service that you can buy them just kind of ad hoc. And it's something where they came up with the idea to reduce waste, which is what lots of these brands are trying to do with this type of product. But in particular here, they're on purpose marketing kind of the mixed up pieces is one of the items. You can do the whole fruit, or they have one that's just like whatever's left over at the end, all the like mushed up bits. They actually sell that. So if you are someone who likes to naturally flavor something, something like, of course, like your blueberries, your raspberries, they really make a beautiful color and you have that natural flavor from it. And then lastly, some little retail examples. These would all be great at any like grab and go counter for like a college food service or like a sandwich place or any sort of cafe. There's has anyone had these? The rocket little apples. They just started showing up in our grocery store, but the packaging idea here is that they're in these cute little tubes where they come like 4 to a tube, and they're super teeny little apples. And they were grown specifically to be snack size. So it's not like that they're using the teeny apples and, figuring out another use for them, which is what I originally thought. They actually bred the Gala and Gala Splendor to make this like really sweet, crisp little apple that can survive in your backpack in one of these tubes. And then this Kenko brand in the middle here, They offer fruit and vegetable gumdrops. So if you really need something sweet in the afternoon and you know you should have a piece of fruit, but you want candy, they are a solution for you, apparently. And then Del Monte is always one that, you think of just like classic, like packaged fruit. I always feel like they do a nice job of coming up with new innovative ways to do it. So, when overnight oats were trendy, there was like a porridge product. And they also kind of quickly remove them when the trend is a little bit less at its peak. So this one was introduced, I think, about a year or so ago, maybe a little longer. And they took to that bubble tea, bubble fruit idea before it started to hit more of a mainstream. So this is the same idea as their fruit, but with popping bubbles inside of it. And that's all I've got.
That's awesome. I've got a question for you. Was there any kind of data about, because of cost or price of some of these fruits as to why they're trending down in the 1 year, versus 4 year?
I don't know that it was necessarily about cost. Sometimes what can happen, certainly on our menu data, and we've seen this for a variety of food categories, is things that do have that more seasonal element will fall off menus when we have any sort of sourcing challenges, because I don't want to call out a specific food item or that it comes with a side or topping of something if I might have to swap it for something different. So those slight shifts, that's why we always say, like, don't look at the like -4 or +4 or less. That could just be the factor of we're having some sourcing challenges.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what was the one product, the umi? What is that? I don't know that I know what that is.
Oh, it's like a salty plum. It's usually like more of like a vinegar type of sauce situation, but it's actually like the plum itself. It's I want to say it's Japanese, but I could be wrong. Someone will correct me and I will be wrong, and I should have triple checked that. But I think it's Japanese.
Very cool. Well, thanks, Claire. Appreciate that. We're going to go to Christie now, and then we'll come back at the end. If anybody has questions, please put them in the chat area. Christie, let's get you going here. So just while she's doing that, so you guys know, Christie, of course, is with SRG, and they're, an agency we work with many of our sponsors and do just amazing work for the companies they work for. We really appreciate all the support and help you guys give us. And we're coming back to Denver, as many of you know, for GCIA. In August. So they'll be helping us as well to come into their town of Boulder and also what we do in Denver. So thanks for being with us today, Christie.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Kevin. I'm just going to do a quick upfront, a little Blueberries 101 for everybody before I hand off to my partner in crime, Chef Daniel Carpenter, who's going to get to the fun stuff, which is some culinary demos. So just to get us started, this is us. As Kevin mentioned, Chef Daniel and I are with Sterling Rice Group. We are the agency that represents the US Highbush Blueberry Council. And a lot of you know how commodity boards work. I think the most simplistic way to describe what we are is the marketing arm for the growers. So they pay an assessment based on selling their volume of fruit. And a portion of that goes to funding efforts that drive volume, like marketing programs and research and all of those good things. And what's cool about the Highbush Blueberry Council is that we are location agnostic in terms of where the blueberries are grown. It's really any blueberry that is sold here in the US and any format of blueberries. So we can talk about fresh, frozen, dried, freeze-dried, powdered, juice, you name it. We oversee all of it, so we can support solutions for chefs and product developers across all of that stuff. So as I mentioned, those formats, we like to say there is a format for every application. One of the nice things about blueberries, so whether you're looking to impart flavor, color, texture, there's really something fun that can do just that for you coming from the blueberry. And just to give you a quick understanding of where blueberries are grown, everybody thinks Maine, and I get that. I thought that too. Maine is wild blueberries, so that's the one thing that we don't oversee. Those are low bush blueberries, and what grows in the rest of the country is high bush blueberries. And so you'll see about 98% of the production, the domestic production of blueberries, comes from 10 states. So there's kind of a band in the South across the Carolinas, Georgia, and Florida, and Texas. And then a more northern band, New Jersey, Michigan, Washington, Oregon. And so that's really how you're gonna see your domestic blueberries in terms of where they're coming from. And then we also have a lot of berries coming in from South America. And what's exciting about this is that because Peru, Chile, Argentina, and Mexico are newer blueberry growing regions, they are getting the latest genetics. So I'm sure we've all remembered a time where we go to the grocery store, we buy some blueberries in January, and they're kind of disappointing. Maybe they're mushy, maybe they're not very flavorful, maybe the skin's really tough. You know, we've all had those kind of disappointing, quote unquote, off-season blueberry experiences. And the good news is that these markets are now getting the very latest in blueberry genetics. So what's going into the ground in South America and Mexico is actually the latest, greatest fruit. And so just starting this year, 21-22, you started to see the new fruit coming in from these regions, which I have to say is exceptional. And so what we're able to say now is that really chefs and consumers alike can be assured of having a very consistent and high quality blueberry year round. So that's our new news, is that our new fruit, whether it's domestically sourced, the fruit that we've all grown up with as a summer berry, or some of that shoulder season, you know, kind of late fall, winter, early spring fruit that's coming in from some of our import markets, is all going to be really consistently flavorful and of high quality. And then again, you've probably seen blueberries come in a lot of different sizes, everything from something that almost approaches a grape to the little bitty guys. There really isn't anything that's better or worse, anything that's more preferable in terms of the quality of fruit. However, if you have a specific need for a berry of a particular size, just know that depending on the volume you're looking for, you can spec for that. So you can talk to your distributors and suppliers about getting a particular size of berry if that's a need that you have. And blueberry nutrition, the good thing is that blueberries have a health halo that everybody knows about. So your patrons know, everybody has a strong association with blueberries as being healthy. So you don't have to do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of communicating that. They're really all-stars when it comes to health. So not very high in calories and very high in things like fiber and polyphenols and vitamin C, manganese, all kinds of good stuff there. So that works hard for us. And I'll just wrap up with a couple of things that we learned. We commissioned a proprietary patron study in 2021 and asked food service patrons across all categories how they wanted to see Blueberries menu. Would they pay more? Just those data points that help us understand how to be showcasing berries on menus. And what we learned was really exciting. So blueberries ranked above strawberries and bananas in terms of the fruit that the most number of people ranked as their favorite fruit, which we thought was interesting. Not surprisingly, there was a lot of commentary around blueberries making a dish seem healthier and fresher, certainly adding that pop of color. And then really strong stats around 70% being willing to pay more for a dish that includes blueberries. They're also looking to get into some of those more innovative applications. So Claire talked a lot about how blueberries are starting to pop in savory applications. We're seeing that too, and we're hearing that that's what patrons want to see. So 59% wishing there were more exciting and adventurous applications for blueberries, and another 56% wishing that blueberries were included more on lunch and dinner menus. So what you're not seeing here is that there's still a lot of love for those traditional favorites. So the smoothies, the breakfast starches, pancakes and muffins, nobody doesn't want those. They're just open to seeing some new stuff in addition to those kind of standby favorites. So with all of that said, it got us thinking, how do we take something, again, building off of what Claire shared, from ubiquity, but still give it some new life? Because we know, I read a stat recently that patrons spend something like 45 seconds in perusing the menu before they decide what to order. So how do we take something as familiar as the blueberry and put an innovative spin on it so that it's jumping out and making patrons want to order that item? So with that as my setup, I will hand over to Chef Daniel, who will talk about some saucy menu inspiration.
Well, what a lovely setup. Thank you, Christie. You basically served it up on a platter for me, and that's what I'm going to do for you now. So I love the commentary, too, of as we're seeing things become, moving from ubiquity to a more common application, that they tend to show up in sauces. And that's entirely on theme for what we're going to discuss today. So I'm thinking about blueberries in all their various forms, again, powdered, IQF, canned. There's a range of those. What we've chosen to do is to really lean into the easiest one to work with, the one that will give you that uniformity across the year, cost effectiveness, easy to store, which is IQF. So what we've done, and this is part of a biannual cycle that we do every, 2 years with food service innovation, where we'll dive into specific subcategories, but we'll also generate a wide range of menu items that really supply us for the next couple of years for inspiration, so that we can help you menu more interesting items, and again, satisfy the desire from the patrons to just see those more often on lunch and dinner menus. And one area where we went a little deeper this year than we really anticipated is what we're calling plus ones. And the idea here is to take two items that we very likely have in your pantry and to combine those, basically smash them together into a compelling menu item. And so what we've done here is we've taken a range of different common sauces that you're likely to have. So thinking about ketchup, thinking about ranch dressing, and really building on those and adding that burst of blue that you get with blueberry. So color, flavor, texture, integrity, again, it just satisfies all those kind of exciter elements that we want to see on menus. And this is a pretty broad range of items. And I'm going to run through a little bit of a laundry list, but thinking about hot sauce, so Tabasco or Texas Pete's, whole grain mustard with blueberries. Blueberry pesto is really delicious. And again, it gives you that little bit of balance that really does matter for patrons as they're looking at your menus. There we go. So Tabasco is a great one. Bourbon caramel for desserts and bread puddings is out of sight. Barbecue sauce, I'm going to talk a little bit about here, but balsamic hot honey is another one where you've got the honey, you've got the heat, the blueberry just really completes that equation to make it truly delicious and something that you want to spread on toast or include in a menu item. Balsamic vinaigrette is another one that really took off for us too. You get that little bit of color interest, but really it's just their best friends, the vinegar and the blueberries together. And something we've worked on quite a bit that's not on this too is pickled blueberries. Stay tuned, because that's something we're going to talk about in the coming years too. Really exciting item. So for today, I did a couple of pre-made ones for you, and I'll do a little brief expo on those. But this is how the blueberry ketchup looks. So again, you'll see it's got really rich color, completely different from a standard ketchup. It holds on to that same ketchup integrity in terms of texture. There's a blueberry ranch. So again, really beautiful, kind of that blue-purple color. And then the blueberry barbecue is the one that's the real star of the show. So you get a very deep and just gorgeous color there. So you think about that on chicken or any other light colored protein, you're thinking about pork or any of those, the blueberry barbecue sauce just really brightens it up. And so what I'm going to do is demonstrate for you just how simple these are to make. So what I've got is an aioli and I've got a chili crisp, which are a little bit different. And again, these are all made with IQF blueberries. So our methodology is really simple. We'll take the frozen product, we'll lie it out on a sheet tray and let it slack. We'll run it through a sieve, so just allow gravity drainage, and then we'll just press it dry. And that gets you roughly to the same texture and consistency that you would see from a canned blueberry that's been drained for significantly less expense and much more availability. So these are all done with basically what is the most ubiquitous and easiest to come by form of blueberries, which is exciting. But we will be providing some recipes for these, and you'll see an alternate preparation that includes canned too, if you happen to have those on hand or you prefer the convenience of that item. So blueberry aioli is really simple. So what I've done is taken just a classic prepared aioli from Sprouts. So just their local house brand, really delightful, easy to do. And it's a roasted garlic aioli, so you do get a little bit of that richness from the roasted garlic. And then we're just going to add a little bit of the pureed IQF blueberry. So very simple. This is just done in a blender. No additional liquid allowed. Anytime you do add the liquid, it does tend to water down the final product and makes it a little bit less toothsome and appealing on the plate. So what we've really done is try to limit the amount of additional water that we put in, and that's what that slacking and straining phase really yields for us. And you'll see, again, this is something that I normally would do in a blender, but it's really simple. These items combine extremely well in a bowl. And when it's finished, again, it gives you that beautiful blueberry color. And one thing that I love about using IQF, especially with one of these lighter substrates, is you can actually see a little bit of the fruit in it. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to catch that on camera, but you can actually see little specks of blueberry. Really, really appealing and very appetizing. Second preparation I'm going to do is something entirely different. And this one actually does feature a dried blueberry instead. So this one is juice infused, meaning it's a little bit sweeter, but it is going to give you that same long shelf life, easy accessibility, very, very compelling form. And again, you can get these that are sugar infused. You can get them that are not infused at all. But the overall flavor of the blue and the color just really shines through in a very compelling way. Chili crisp, ubiquitous, something we're seeing all over. This flavor combination is mind-boggling. It's something that we were actually fortunate enough to test in Las Vegas. We had a few hundred attendees at ICCA, which was a really fun show. And this was one of the stars. We just served it very simply on a rice cracker, and it garnered a lot of attention and a lot of return visits, which for us is normally the indicator of a successful item. It was fun to meet people the first time. The second time, I think they just came to have a little after lunch snack, honestly. And we did not begrudge them that because we really love to share that message. But again, it's as simple as that. And you'll see you get a beautiful diversity of color. The toasted garlic element with the blueberry too is just romantic. It's something that you can't substitute. And of course, the chili infused oil just brings it all together, really brightens it up.
This was cool. We got a lot of comments on this one. People were like, is it going to be spicy?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. I mean, you guys all know this because you're familiar with chili crisp. It's just flavorful. It is robustly flavorful.
And this is one where I can see topping a ramen dish with it, any fried rice. We've done it on pizza. We've done it on tacos. It's really one of those ubiquitous, really, really useful ingredients. And again, it generates a little bit of oil at the bottom that, of course, all the cooks fight over at the end of the shift, dipping their bread into. But it's just one of those really compelling items. And again, plus one is as simple as that. You take a pantry item, add the magic of blueberries to it, and you have something that feels entirely new, fresh, exciting on your menu, something that you can use in a variety of applications. So we're really excited to share that with you. Be on the lookout. We'll have those recipes coming to you. And we're just really excited to share some of the magic of blueberries.
Hey, Chef, I've got a question for you. Talk about the ketchup a little bit. So is this, are you using like a ketchup? Are you using tomato? I mean, what do you do? How do you create it?
So I'm using a straight up ketchup. So this is prepared Heinz, this example. And again, you get the beautiful vinegar interaction as well, the little bit of that spice packet that's included in the Heinz that really works with blueberry. But I've also done it just using oven dried tomatoes and starting from scratch and adding my own seasonings to it too. So maybe more of a bandol flavor in the vinegar or something like that to give you a little bit of a different overall flavor profile is really compelling. And again, chipotle is a beautiful pair for this. The smokiness of the chipotle with a little bit of the tomato or the adobo with the blueberry. Again, those are just best friends that you can really develop. We're actually presenting some blueberry tamales in a couple of weeks at a trade show that'll really be a huge success. And they do a really nice job of interacting with items where you might struggle with moisture retention as well. The blueberry gives you another way to hold a little bit of moisture in that product. So it's it's a win from a variety of different directions.
And we'll send around our kind of recipes for these. Most of them you can do in any quantity. So as Chef was talking about, I think the ranch is it 2 parts to 1 part, or is that one?
So ketchup is 1 part blueberry to 3 part ketchup.
Okay.
The ranch is 1 to 2. So blueberry 1, ranch 2. The barbecue sauce is 1 to 1. Any more blueberry than that, it gets to be a little bit dark, honestly. Chili crisp is 3 parts blueberry to 5 parts chili crisp. And the aioli is also 3 parts blueberry to 5 parts of the prepared aioli. So there are varying ratios, and part of that is just, as we learned, blueberry can play kind of a supporting role or occasionally a leading role in that. So in the ketchup instance in particular, it comes through pretty strongly, likewise in the ranch. Where it just hits you first as you hit the flavor. And then as it kind of dissipates, you see that nice long finish that you get with those beautiful intense fruits, almost like drinking a red wine.
So in the ketchup, back again on that, is that one where you're using the frozen again and you're straining, the same thing, or are you using a different product?
Exactly. So any of these other than the chili crisp that I showed, we're all done with that, the IQF. And it's a quick turnaround. They slack in about an hour and a half. So it really isn't unduly burdensome on the operator. But if you do prefer to have that quick turnaround, a canned option is always ready available. And you will end up with roughly the same end product, particularly if the canned is done in a very light form. Normally, they don't have a ton of sugar added. If they do, you might want to make a minor adjustment on the recipe, but it's not going to be anything overly intense, especially with something like a ketchup where you've got a fair amount of sugar in it already.
Cool. Well, this is a question both for Claire and for the two of you. But obviously, I mean, blueberries are important all the way across the menu. What's growing? I mean, is it growing in in desserts more, or breakfast more, or what? What's the growth area for blueberry?
For sure. Well, I can speak to the data that we have, and Claire, absolutely invite you to jump in with what you're seeing too. We are seeing a pretty steady rate on kind of breakfast and desserts. We're seeing a lot of growth in beverage. So a lot of cocktails, mocktails that are using blueberries. And then we were talking about some of those savory applications, sauces like this that make blueberry in a savory application more approachable, because people want permission, and they want it to still feel like, okay, no ranch dressing, and I know blueberries. I've never had blueberry ranch, but it feels like I can always get the sauce on the side if I just want to try a little bit. So it just gives them permission to kind of tiptoe into these savory applications. And we're seeing chefs and operators respond to that, because they're obviously trying to meet the needs of their patrons. So they want something that still feels innovative, but offers that bit of exploration.
Yeah, a couple of the big winners from our previous round of food service innovation were a blueberry and peanut butter hamburger,
yes,
and a blueberry croque madame. Both of those were off the charts and really unusual applications. The appearance of them is gorgeous, but once you taste it, you really are a committed fan.
One thing we didn't talk about, and Chef Daniel, maybe you can speak to this, but we've used a compote on all kinds of different things. So kind of make one compote. That's not a +1 sauce necessarily. It's A1. It's, blueberries, and then you can potentially add some lemon juice or some sugar, some other things. But using that on a fried chicken sandwich, using that in a bourbon drink, using that in a milkshake, using that on breakfast items.
And that can skew savory very easily too. If you start with aromatics and finish with herbs, you can go to rosemary and thyme with that very easily. Garlic and blueberries are phenomenal together. So you really do have a lot of options. And then if you want to add any elements of a deglaze on that, so, a little flambe of bourbon or any sort of brandy, that sort of thing really just creates that really complete flavor profile. Mount it with a little bit of butter for decadence. You really have a lot of great options with those compotes.
Yummy on proteins for sure.
Yeah. It's nice to go beyond glazes, because normally that's where people started with fruits and savory, and it was a very simple go-to, but to really be moving beyond that starting point really has been exciting for us.
Very cool. Claire, you've got anything to add in on?
I do agree with everything that's been said. I was seeing where things are growing. There's some growth in deli salads. I don't know if you've been seeing like pops of it in like coleslaws and stuff. That's kind of a unique application. The barbecue sauce you already mentioned, wings, is a growing application. And then there's lots of the samplers where it's, you have your ketchup, your classic ketchup ranch, and then interesting sauce that features fruit, often blueberry, is a growing one. I'm like scrolling through the data. And then when you mentioned the ketchup, I went into Scores and I was looking for the top savory application featuring blueberries. And it is in fact a burger, like a pork burger with a blueberry ketchup. So that did pretty well in Scores. So that seems like a good item.
I'm seeing blueberry barbecue sauce pop on a lot of menus. I've also been seeing a lot of blueberry beers being launched. So we talked a little bit about beverage. I'm reading, Daniel, on your behalf, some of the comments in the chat box, and there's a question of, have you ever tried pasta applications?
I have. I've done a little bit of that, and it was very, very simple, almost like cacio e pepe, just with a little bit of blueberry. So again, the garlic that you might include in that, but certainly the cheese and the pepper with blueberries. And again, it allows the blueberry to really shine through as the star. It does color the dish beautifully. The one thing that before I started experimenting with blueberries, I was concerned it might tend into the gray area, and it really doesn't. The blueberry tends to really hold its color in a very meaningful way, particularly if you're not adding a bunch of dark reds and darker browns to it. It really does pop in a way that's just very appetizing on the plate, and opens up some great garnishing possibilities too, because you think about how blue and yellow play together. If you had lemon or lime or any of the herbs, it's really just visually a great backdrop to use for those beautiful plate presentations.
We've also had some fun with blueberry flatbreads and pizzas. So we did develop a flatbread with blueberry and brie, which, as you can imagine, is great. Blueberry ricotta is a nice combination with some black pepper in there. And then Chef Daniel mentioned blueberry balsamic reduction. So a lot of those types of applications can get you into that pasta place as well.
Yeah. And similar idea, thinking about Italian as we're thinking about Southwestern and Mexican too.
Yeah.
So blueberry carnitas flatbreads are just off the charts, or barbacoa, any of those. Chicken tinga certainly benefits from a little burst of blue as well.
Mole.
Yeah, and the mole is one of our plus ones, where if you buy a purchased mole, you can add blueberry to it and you really get an amazing impact. Color, not so much. Flavor is really over the top on that one.
We have another question from
Yeah.
you.
Okay. You're doing great, Christy. Thanks.
Yeah.
She knows how to do this.
So,
She's on it. I was about to ask it. She's on it.
do you get different flavor from fresh, frozen, or freeze-dried? So depending on the format.
Absolutely. Again, thinking about tailoring your desired flavor outcome by choosing the proper format is a big part of this too. So thinking about IQF in canned, you're not going to have that same level of concentration. So you might use a little bit more volume, which of course gives you more color at times. But if you're really looking for high intensity, you can get into the concentrates. The powders in particular are very effective because they don't add bulk, they don't add water, but they give you that color benefit and they give you the flavor benefit that you're really looking for. So yeah, there's as you run the spectrum of the different formats, you really want to think about, in particular with the dried, because there are infused ones, there are juice infused, and there are just unsweetened altogether, which for me, that's the one I love, because then I can control the sugar level rather than having it be preset, sort of like salted versus unsalted butter. It gives you a chance to really dial in exactly where you want to be, and batch to batch, even depending on if you're working with ingredients that have sugar variability at all, it gives you a chance to do that final tasting and to hit the flavor profile exactly where you want it to be.
So it's interesting you're saying the powder actually gives you the same color. So it doesn't lose anything in that process?
It's amazing. The color is so set in the powder. It doesn't disappear at all. And again, that was another one where I was concerned it might tend to degrade. It really doesn't. It stays vibrant blue, super usable, and something that sometimes we'll augment if we've added a little bit of the other forms in and we say, hey, it needs just a little bit more of a blueberry identity. The powder can be our secret weapon at the end and just give us that last little bit. We did a blue-eyed Bloody Mary, which was just a phenomenal blend. And we didn't want to change the flavor of the tomato medium too much, so we added more of the powder just to get that color influence and a little bit of the blueberry undertone, and that turned out to be the right choice. And again, that's look out for the photos of that one because it's a showstopper.
Cool. Hey, while you're on beverage too, let's talk, because cocktails, obviously, it's huge in this area. What are some other ones you're seeing that are like new and trendy?
Well, we did a Manhattan that was really off the charts. And again, this is a place where pickled can show up in the garnish. So substitute the Luxardo cherry for some pickled blueberries on a Manhattan, off the charts. And again, using blueberry in the mix. So we'll use puree in that instance to really give you that color and to have the good interaction with the bourbon and the vermouth. We did a Paloma, which was off the charts. Range. Spreads. Yeah. Geez, the Aperol Spritz was over the top too.
Crazy cool. And we've also candied dried blueberries. So kind of reconstituting the dried blues in Curacao or, pick your poison, but really some beautiful cocktail applications. And as you can imagine, the color is pretty stunning. Yeah, the Caipirinha was a showstopper. Yeah. Caipirinha Mojito in that range too. It's just, again, we found the applicability of this fruit to be so broad that you can really, as long as you're careful about the format and the ratios, and again, that sugar level in particular, you can get an amazing result in a lot of these different areas. Aperol Spritz was over the top. That was great. Perfect kind of summery spritz. A little patio experience. Yep. So Kevin, I promised that we would debut these ideas with you and this group. So we are just putting the finishing touches on our compilation of about 15 of these +1 sauce ideas. So this group will be the first to receive that. I'll send that through you so everybody can get that, just some thought starters. And I will again, we're the commodity board. So if you guys have any questions, if you want samples of any format to play with in your kitchen, please just let me know because we're happy to support any of that. And we'll actually have some of this in DC during our ICCA summit, correct? That's right. Yeah. Looking forward to that. We got to work on one of the cocktails. For sure. That will not be a problem. Yeah, this has been great. Well, thanks. Any final thoughts here before we go to a video and wrap up? But thanks to everyone for being with us today. Thanks for all sponsors and members that are with us. I will just take a couple of seconds here just to talk about the upcoming events. Of course, we have the ICCA Summit in DC coming up in about 3 weeks. There's a lot of new information. I'll be getting it out here in the next couple of days, but it's so funny that what's happening this time of year and, post-pandemic is
chefs are getting back to me now that I sent things out to them 2 months ago. And they're like, I'm sorry, I'm just getting back to you, but I want to be involved. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, we'll make it happen. I'm tweaking the schedule and adding people in wherever we can. But I'm excited about a couple of things. I mean, we're going to have some of the people from Jose Andres World Central Kitchen to come and talk to us about all the stuff they're doing. It's fascinating. It's mind-boggling, actually, to think all the things that they're doing. But also, we've added a lot of new restaurants to our dine around, which are very ethnic oriented. Everything from Ethiopian to Indian to Peruvian. So we've got a lot of different choices that'll be there. Our speakers and presenters and the demonstrators that are going to be there too. It's just going to be a great time. We've got a great turnout so far, so things look really good, and people are still signing up this week, which is not unusual for our group. We always get a lot of last minute people signing up. So we're looking forward to that. And then one of the things I want to mention is if you haven't been to the GCIA site, for those of you that are GCIA members and sponsors, please go and take a look, because Denver, we've moved from going to Cleveland, Ohio, to going to Denver. And the reason is a lot of Cleveland restaurants hadn't opened up, and especially Michael Simon closed all his. He actually had the best restaurants in the city. And so we're going to give them a little bit of time. We'll go back to Cleveland, but we're going to give them a little time to recover from this. And of course, Denver is just booming. So the board decides on where we go. And so it went back and forth, to be honest with you, between Denver and Tampa St. Pete. It was an equal vote, like 2 times out. The third time around, it became Denver. So we're happy to go back there. So that's going to be in August, late August of this year. And then the GCIA Culinary Combine is going to be in October, late October in San Diego. All the information for all the events coming up. Boise, Idaho is the other event for ICCA. That's going to be in September. What's funny, I said to Susan recently this week, because everybody's been asking me about dates, but it's all on the website and the details are there. More will be coming on things like for the Culinary Combine in October. That'll be coming up here in the next coming weeks. But thanks again, everyone, for being with us today. Mike, let's finish up with a video. And I want to thank Chef Daniel and Christie and Claire. Thanks. Presentations were awesome. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being with us today.